to one more session of International Financial Management. In our last few classes, we have discussed about uh, what is international trade flows, capital flows, what is balance of payment, and its different components. So, in today's session, we'll talk about what are the factors which influence international trade and capital flows. Okay, so we'll discuss each of the factors in detail. I have given an overview of it in my last class, but we'll move on and go it in a bit detail. So there are certain factors. So we'll talk about first trade flows, that is the trade between one country and the rest of the world. So there are certain factors which influence trade flows, which include cost of labor, inflation, national income, credit conditions, government policies, restriction on imports, and so on. So we'll talk about it in detail. So the first one being cost of labor. So as I told you in our last class also, cost of labor is nothing but the wages paid to the labor, how high or low they are, and what is their impact on the cost of the product. So in countries especially like China, where labor are paid very low, in those countries, uh, producing a product at a low cost is easy, and so those products produced by such low cost labor countries are very competitive in the international market because other countries don't have such favorable low cost labor. So even though you have a industry which is labor intensive, your product becomes cheap when the wages paid in that country is really low. The same concept doesn't work in Europe because in Europe, labor is very costly. Whether a blue collar job or a white collar job, they have to pay high. That's the reason why these European and American countries are opening units in countries like India and say China and Southeast Asia, to be very precise. Why? Because is if they outsource their product here, the cost of labor in such countries like India, China is lower than their home country, and hence their products become competitive. So a country producing labor intensive products will have more exports than other European countries. Then the second factor here is inflation. The inflation is nothing but the rate of increases in prices in a given country. So if there is a high inflation, means the price of commodities in a particular country is really high, then other countries will not favor products from those high inflation countries. They will buy products where they are cheaper. The next one is national income. National income tells us the sum total of individual income in a country. So it is a sum of uh, the income from production, agricultural services, or you can say the sum of individual income, whether they are employees, businessmen, corporates, whatever it is. So national income is a income of the total country. So if the national income of a country is high, means the per capita income of the country or the individual income of a country is high, those countries, the person who is having a high income will demand more of luxury and comfort items or even imported items. So in such countries, demand for imports is more. This is how national income will have an impact on the export and import of the country. The next thing is credit conditions. So credit condition means if in a country the tax rates are high, or you can say the interest rate is high, in such countries, companies will not be able to take loan and invest, or say smaller companies will not survive because the interest rate is high. So they are not able to pay back their debts. So in such cases, what happens is the investment will be weakened, and so the production will decrease. So when the production in a home country will decrease, it can't produce more products, it can't export more products. So the country's consumers have to depend on foreign products. So imports will increase if credit conditions, that is, if the interest rate on loans is high, imports increase and it will have a negative effect on the balance of trade. The next important thing is government policies. Now, when we say government policies, there are a big list of items which are included in government policies. They may be policies regarding imports, exports, piracy, environment, labor, business, taxes, security laws, uh, country trade requirements, and policies to punish countries. So one by one in detail, we'll talk about it. So restriction on imports. So a restriction of imports means when a country doesn't want its consumers or its citizens to buy more of foreign products. Why? Because if more and more imports are happening, it is having a negative balance, or we have a trade deficit. That is, exports are less than imports. When our imports are more, we are spending more on outside items, which have an impact on balance of payment as well as the national income. So to restrict the imports, government has certain strategies. The important being are imposition of tariffs and quotas. Tariff is nothing but a tax which is an extra tax imposed on imports. Means if you as a consumer are importing an item from another country, and if the government feels that such imports should be restricted, they will have extra tax on such products. If I can, for this, I can give you an example of a Ferrari car which was being gifted to Sachin Tendulkar. Okay, so it was a gift, but when that car had to come to India, its tax or the tariff on it was double the amount of its cost. So then it was the car was something around 85 crores and 100% tariff. So he had to pay 85 crores so that he can receive the gift. So he, uh, applied to the government that his tax should be waived off. And there was a much hype on all these things. There was a big news. Critics claimed that how can Sachin claim tax reductions being so rich? So all this high funda drama was there. Then the Ferrari people said, we will pay the tax, don't bother about it, and so on. Okay, so the drama continued for say a couple of months. Then the tax was waived off because he's a Bharat, what is that? He's a famous star of sports. So at the end the tariff was waived off, but it's just an example to show you that how a product can be made very high by imposing tariff. Tariff is nothing, that is a custom duty or a tax on imported products. So it is done basically so that you are discouraged from buying a foreign product. Another one tactic is quotas. Quotas means the maximum amount of a product that can be imported from a country, from by one importer at one particular time. So certain products are there which cannot be ordered more than a particular maximum limit at one time. So this is how government will restrict imports. Then government uses tactics to boost imports. So they are giving them subsidies. Now what is subsidies? Subsidies means the government is paying part of their production cost so that it becomes cheaper to the exporters and they can have a competitive pricing in the international market. So one of the best example for giving subsidies is again China, and we use the term dumping. Dumping means exporting products that are produced with the help of subsidies. The cost price of such a product is, the price of the selling price of the product is much less than the cost price. Why? Because that much amount is got by the government so that they can boost the exports. So the point is selling a product less than the cost price of the product. This is only possible when somebody is sponsoring you as a form of subsidies. So this is one of the important tactics how government try to boost the exports so that that trade deficit, the trade surplus increases and trade deficit decreases. Then restriction on piracy. So now we have come across many pirated products, or we say fake products or duplicate products. So if in a country piracy laws are very weak, then the imitated products will be produced in abundance, which will indirectly reduce imports because the original product is not from that home country and it was imported. When the same thing is mimicked or pirated in a home country, then it will reduce imports. So best example is China. Again, China produces every possible pirated product which is available in the whole world, right from your CDs, toys, to automobile sector. Okay, so any high-end car you want, its duplicate or pirated copy is available in China at a very, very low price. So particularly automobile sector, they don't have any piracy. Even international companies have failed even after have putting a case on those pirated companies, because Chinese government doesn't bother how the product is made, whether it is pirated, ethical, unethical, cheap, under quality. Their problem is they want more and more of exports. Next is labor laws. Now, labor laws in some particular countries also hinder exports and imports. So in some countries, the laws or rights of workers is very strict. At that time, you have to pay a standard price to them, standard income or standard salary or wages to them. And so you can't exploit them. And thereby your product becomes costly. Similarly, there are many industries where child labor is used because it is very cheap. But if a country is having a strict child labor law, that child labor is prohibited, then they can't make that same product cheaply and they will not be competitive also. So the best example for child labor that industries which undertake child labor are cigarette or that BD manufacturing companies, then what is that? Crackers. So here more of child labor, even the glass factories and so on. So if you have strict laws, you can't do it using child labor. Then business laws. So if in some countries, if you a MNC wants to enter and to enter it, if it has to pay bribes, it will be really difficult for that country to open a unit there or even get a license, because the bribery, the bureaucracy will hinder their investment in that country. And so producing at a lower cost will be, because most of their money they have to either spending rather than spending on the different cost of production, that is material labor, they have to pay heavy bribes, which it makes them makes their product indirectly very costly. So same thing I told you, if a government is having strict rules that if an outsider wants to do business, it has to obtain license, or an insider wants to export or import, it has to take license. Then there is bureaucracy. You know, there any government job, if you got a permission from government, it is not easy. It is neither very swift and quick. Okay, they don't sort after using technology or online. Even if they are doing it online, they take their own pace, and the delay will happen, and when the delay happens, it becomes costly for the exporter to do the business. Then in many countries, government tries to own big units so that others cannot compete them, because when it's a government sector, they can have minimum prices because their motive is not profit, and so subsidies are given, lots of huge funds from the government are entered, and so the product becomes cheaper. So again, in the example is Chinese government, which has invested billions of dollars giving subsidies to auto manufacturers who produce pirated versions of Mercedes, your limousine, Porsche, and whatnot. Similarly, US government also bailed out General Motors in 2009 by investing huge billion dollars in the purchase of lower stock of amount in General Motors, and thereby killing the competition. Then there is one more government policy which we call it as country security laws. Some countries, especially USA in this case, they feel that those products which are giving security threat to their country, those products will not be imported. Okay, so if for example, Brazil is manufacturing a airplane which advanced technology, or say US companies are manufacturing some advanced technology military products and it is selling outside. So it will not allow that company to sell it outside because they don't want those weapons to be available to rest of the world, and they want to make it only available for their own country. So for such things also there may be laws where you are not allowing your home country companies or foreign companies to do business with regard to such products which they feel is a security threat. Then the last thing is, we have certain policies just to punish a country. So for a listed example is India's policies towards China. Why? Because China is trying to take away, or you can say capture our land. So we are using the policy of boycotting Chinese products. Many of the apps on the internet are banned. So even such policies, when there is tension between two countries, also restrict trade. No doubt it is good for the identity, for the safety and security of the country, but these laws will hamper the trade relations. You know that Zomato, Paytm have then have, what is that called, Chinese investment. Many banks also are having Chinese investment. So when you're doing that against China policy, means they have to take back the amount, or they have to stop business here, which will hamper their business. So this is the different. Lastly, exchange rate. Exchange rate also will hamper the trade. So if the exchange rate is high, for importers will not, foreigners will not buy Indian products, or when our value decreases, they will not buy it. On the other hand, if our value is decreased, so we can sell more of exports and thereby increase or correct our balance of trade. But this is temporary, because if we reduce our or devalue our currency, other countries also may follow the same thing and make their products cheaper. So it is a temporary thing. That's why exchange rate fluctuation is not always the best way. So a weak currency means you're devaluing your currency against dollar. Say for example, dollar is 70 rupees, $1. You weaken it and make it 75 rupees, $1. Means you are reducing your rupee currency so that export are increased. But this can be only with respect to dollar. So if you are having business with other countries where your currency is stalled, this tactic of reducing the value of the currency will not have any impact on the trade deficit. So these are the different factors which influence the trade flows or export or imports among two countries. So that's all about it for today. You have any doubts, you please raise it. Comment so that I understand you have seen it and understood perfectly. So we'll meet for the next session. Thank you. Bye.